Yo, what's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Celtics Chronicle. As usual, I'm your boy Adam Taylor, and as usual, I'm joined by my homie, compadre, co-host in crime, Mr. Tim Sheils. What's popping, Tim?
Nothing much. Very happy to hear the news about Sam Hauser. Very, very big stuff.
Yep, we're going to dive in all into the Sam Hauser news today. If you're new here, first and foremost, let's get the pleasantries out of the way. If you're new here, my name's Adam Taylor. I cover the Boston Celtics for USA Today, SB Nation, and the Celtics Chronicle newsletter. Links in the bio. Go sign up. Tim's formerly of CLNS Media and of SB Nation for Celtics blog. I'd like to put that out there, one, because anyone that's coming across this on YouTube or is listening to the podcast for the first time, they're like, who's this English dude? Well, now you know. Who's this random other guy that's obviously wearing a smiley face New England Patriots hat? Well, now they know. It kind of just adds a little bit of credibility, and everyone knows why we're talking about the Celtics and why we think our opinions hold anyway, which they don't. Let's just put that out there. They do not.
We just like screaming into the void
We
on a
do.
daily basis.
We do.
It's fine.
Right. So today we're going to be looking at Sam Hauser's re-signing, well, not even re-signing, signing a contract extension, which, if anyone follows me on Twitter, you saw I put out a Bobby Marks piece yesterday. Just like, obviously I just shared a quote. It kind of popped off. Like, there was a lot of interactions on there. So yesterday, Marks had put on there because Boston is a repeat tax team, next year the NBA is set to implement more stringent penalties. A new contract for Hauser starting at even at $8 million would add over $60 million in tax penalties. Marks put that out on Friday in like an ESPN Plus, like big questions for every team in the NBA midway through, early in free agency or whatever the title was. So Marks put that out on Friday. Brad Stevens turns around on Sunday. We're recording this on Sunday, basically in like a hold my beer moment. Do you know what I mean? It was just one of those hold my beer moments, and I'm just trying to find the Woj tweet as we speak because I want to read this verbatim. If anyone's watching live, you'll see this on the screen, but I just want to make sure it's there. Boston Celtics forward Sam Hauser, one of the NBA's most accurate three-point shooters, has agreed on a 4-year, $45 million extension. Well, that's more than $8 million a year, which means the tax penalties that come with that are more than $60 million. It is a lot of money, but when you look at what the Celtics have done this offseason, the move makes perfect sense. It's continuity. In the last 12 months, Brad Stevens has extended Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum, Derrick White, Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, and Sam Hauser. He also brought back Nemi. It wasn't an extension, it was a new deal. Brought back Nemi on a multi-year deal, brought back Tillman on a 2-year deal, and brought back Luke Cornett on a 1-year deal. So Stevens has really extended this window for the Celtics. Hauser felt like the last shoe to drop. Some people felt that Baylor Shireman being drafted was kind of insurance in case they lost Sam. Now, we've been quite vocal, like over the last few episodes, that their skill sets aren't exactly the same. Sam gives you more defensively, Baylor gives you more offensively, can do more things. Now there's the two of them, they can work in tandem. I really like this deal. I think it's fair value for Sam. He gets paid. Remember, 3 years ago, he was an undrafted rookie. In 2020, he went undrafted 3 seasons ago, coming into the 4th season now. Gone from being an undrafted rookie to a two-way guy, earning a contract with the Celtics halfway through his first season in the league, into being one of the best shooters in the NBA, like role-playing movement shooters, to being an NBA champion. Like, he deserves this pay. But it does raise some flags for the Celtics. How are you feeling about this whole deal?
I'm glad. There was part of me that was concerned that there wasn't going to be a deal happening. But I think if you look at all of the deals that they've signed this offseason, all of it has been with the primary goal of keeping this unit together. And they're not afraid to dig into their pockets, really, to make it happen financially. So, the biggest spot where it's going to hurt is the luxury tax, which we'll get into in terms of like the number, because let's face it, it's gonna be a big bill. But the biggest thing you could do with this is justifying it, because you're keeping continuity, you're keeping together a team, not just for sake of continuity, but a team that won a championship. So like, this is the unit that you want to move forward with. And Sam Hauser is another really good story of an undrafted free agent getting an NBA contract, carving out a role, Celtics believing in him, and kind of making up for the mistake of letting Max Strus go, because that was one that I'm sure that's haunted them, especially seeing how he's had success since leaving Boston between Miami and Cleveland. But with Sam Hauser, it's a sharpshooter. He's really developed his game. His defense has taken a big step forward, added little wrinkles to his offensive game, one of the most efficient shooters from three-point range in the NBA. And you got him at an appropriate figure. I think the one thing I will say, too, is obviously beyond just the salary cap implications of just the luxury tax and all of that stuff, Boston has now got more than just, you don't have these middling contracts too. Like you've got a situation that's happening with the salary cap where you've got your max guys getting paid insane money, and then you've got bottom tier guys. There's not going to be a lot of space in between to operate. There's basically going to be like no middle class in the NBA, so to speak, when it comes to these contracts because of the new CBA structure. So having a contract like Sam Hauser on the books, not only are you keeping stuff together and you're going to keep a guy who wants to be here and you're keeping him paid and happy, but you're also making sure that you've got these movable contracts in case you need to make any moves. You're not letting an asset get away for nothing because you're not going to be able to just go out on the market and pay the same rate for anyone. You're not going to have that financial flexibility. So if something's working and you want to keep it in-house, this covers all your bases. It keeps a guy here who's capable of fitting in your system, has a role, plays it damn well, and you're also potentially covering yourself, down the line. If you have to make any moves with your roster, you've got the contracts to make it possible. Now, aggregation gets weird because of the new CBA, but
you can't aggregate. They're a second apron team.
Exactly. Which is all the more important to have like contracts that have some size to them, so you can make the moves for smaller contracts if you need to. Something that is an inevitability sometimes with certain teams, but at the end of the day, I'm really, really happy with this deal, and I think all parties are benefiting. It makes me extremely happy.
Yeah, I think that when you look at, as you said, the way that the new CBA is removing that middle class, what we're probably going to see is the higher end of that middle class, like your high-end role players, are probably going to get slight overpays, because if you're unable to aggregate salaries as like a first apron, second apron team, so it's a straight this contract for that contract type of deal, having players that would previously have earned in that 14 to like 16.5 million range, having them sitting around that 18 to 20 range just gives you so much more flexibility to get another high-end role player in return, because you can't bring back you can't aggregate to build up to that number, right? Obviously, if you're trading to a team with cap space, then you can just shed some salary, bring back a guy or two because you're okay there. But it does give the Celtics some optionality in being able to be like, hey, we're 2 years into this. Porzingis hasn't been healthy or whatever. Maybe we're going to move on from KP. Now we're going to retool a little bit. We have the Sam Hauser, the Drew Holiday contracts where we can flip them and do whatever. But I don't want to look at that yet. Like, I see a lot of people talking about like, oh, in 2-3 years, this is what's going to happen. To be honest with you, I don't care. That's 2-3 years down the line. Right now, this Celtics team is ready to contend. It's the exact same roster coming back with the addition of Shireman, an empty roster spot. You've lost O'Shea, you've lost Fee. We don't know what's going to happen with Watson yet. Maybe he gets a full-time deal. Maybe he goes two-way. Who knows? But in terms of continuity, in terms of we know what we're coming into, Mazzulla has the same team. They understand the system. Mazzulla will probably add some tweaks here and there just because that makes sense to me. Like, hey, your playbook was big and deep anyway, but teams would have scouted that now. So adding in that extra little bit will help in terms of just keeping things fresh. So everyone on this roster is only going to have to learn a page or two of a playbook because everything else is ingrained in them. Hauser was a big part of that. They ran a lot of different actions for him throughout the season. I don't need to name them. We can look at that at another point. They also lent on him defensively sometimes, having him being switchable between the 4, the 3, sometimes switching up to 5 as a cross match just to allow that switch out of a pick and roll to happen. You don't really want him switching any lower than the 3 because he's going to get cooked. But he's proven that he can hold his own, he can bang. 3-and-D guy, added in that one dribble pull-up to attack a closeout, started building on that. We saw some Hauser dunks during the early part of the season. That was really fun. He had a stretch of games where he was just finding the rim. And cool, I'm down for it. Those little exciting moments mixed in with the floor spacing that he provides, the catch and shoot threat, the catch and shoot threat, the movement shooting threat, all of those things add up to being a really impactful floor spacing forward off the bench. I'm down with it. Keep him around as long as you can. I'm just going to put this out there. I remember, and I like to talk about this, I was probably the first guy to interview Sam after he got picked up by the Celtics originally. That's on my old YouTube channel. I'm going to have to try and find the video for that somewhere. So I remember speaking to him like when he was a two-way guy, not sure how he was going to even crack into the rotation. So to now see this dude like signing a multi-year deal, already a champion, could end his tenure in Boston. 2, 3 rings to his name, having played a legitimate role. Coming off the bench, but he's not a guy that's been the 15th man on 3 championship teams, averaging 1 minute every 4 games. Like, he's playing a legit role. I'm interested to see how him and Scheinman can work together, whether Scheinman even gets into the rotation, whether him and Hauser are pitted against each other to try and take both of them to the next level. But overall, this is a great deal for Boston. This is a great deal for Sam Hauser. I'm not too bothered about the tax implications. I know that Keith Smith tweeted out that next season it's going to put Boston around 425 million in total for the roster. That's cap space, like your normal salaries plus your luxury tax penalties. One thing I do want to note is there's a lot of contracts that have been signed over the last few weeks that don't actually kick in the 24-25 season. It kicks in 25 to 26 because, like, Sam Hauser, the Celtics picked up his team option the end of June. So that took him to the end of the upcoming season anyway. So with an extension, it ticks on at the end of that contract. It doesn't replace that year. So it's a 4-year extension, but technically he's around for 5 years. He's got 1 more year on that 2.1 million, which is what he was picked up for at the end of this in June. And then he will tick over to his new 45 million across the 4 years, which works out just a little shade over 11 million. So that's a big pay rise coming for him at the end of next season. Drew Holiday will be the same. He was already under contract. When his extension kicks in, it will start next year. Jaylen Brown's Supermax starts now because his deal ended at the end of the offseason, at the end of the season. He moves into the Supermax. Tatum's will start next year. See how this works. So,
and Derrick too.
Derrick too. So what happens is this team sounds super expensive, but the Celtics don't really face the brunt of this until next summer and going into the season after the one that's just about to come. That's when the biggest pay issues are going to hit them, and they're going to be like, oh shit, there's a lot of money that needs to go out. Whether the sale of the team changes these things, whether it makes it harder to move the team, whether if somebody purchasing it isn't going to want to pay and they're going to want to try and retool or blow it up or whatever, you just don't know, right? I mean, they've said that Wick's going to be running things until 2028, so that gives you enough time to win a few more. But for now, continuity matters. This team know each other. Brad Stevens has gone out cooking, man. He's doing his thing. Executive of the Year, Brad Stevens. Please put some respect on that man's name.
Actually, thinking about it now, I wonder if these kind of moves where you manage to go ahead and retain all of these guys, if the Celtics continue to have success, I wonder if he ends up in that same conversation again. Or is it going to be a situation where, a team like Phillies, God, I can't remember who their GM is now. Is it still Morey?
Yeah, it's Morey.
Yeah. If Morey ends up going into the running because of the Paul George signing.
I mean, it depends how it works out, right? Like,
exactly. That's me putting cart before horse there. But
the Sixers to me are too situational. If this happens, if Paul George is healthy, if Embiid is healthy, if they're healthy at the same time, then they're a contender. If. No, not for me. Cool. But I get what you're saying. I just want to say that I'm not all in on Philly the way that certain people are, just because there's too many ifs. I don't like it.
Yeah, if the caveat includes if and or but.
Yeah, we're not writing JavaScript here. We don't need to be if this, then that, and or else. We're not doing none of the coding here. So I'm sorry, I did cut you off mid-train. I do apologize.
No, my only thought process was talking about just in terms of the salary cap implications. I know that it's not going to affect them until next year, but what was the final total on that in terms of including this projected salary and the tax penalty?
Keith Smith had it at 425.
425?
Yeah. But he said next season. So, the one off Keith Smith says 425. I will triple check, but I'm pretty sure. I mean, this is why I try not to talk too much about the cap, right? Because I'm an X's and O's guy. I'm a film guy. If I want cap stuff, I'm bringing in a cap expert.
Yeah.
Salary plus penalties will be around 425 million for next season. The problem is, because we're in the off season, it's really hard to gauge what next season is. Is that the upcoming season, or is that the season after this one where everything all kicks in? We'll have to get Keith on the show just to kind of clarify these things. I don't want to dive into something that we're not super comfortable with, just because,
I agree.
Information matters, getting it right matters. I'll tell you about what plays they run for Hauser all day long. I'll tell you about what actions they run against trap defenses all day long. You want to ask me about captures? I ain't got a clue, dude. Math is not my strong suit. Math is not my strong suit. No, it is my strong suit. Watching Sam Hauser drain freeze, that's my strong suit.
And it's exciting. I think it's, again, this is a move that I don't think was necessarily like a given. And I do wonder long term how these kind of moves are going to add up in terms of roster decisions later down the line. But keeping a core together that has done what this team has done, had the dominant season that they did, it's exciting. It's exciting. A lot of teams, I think this is kind of, you look around the league and what's happened with some other teams, like, everything that happened with Milwaukee when they blew it up for Dame Lillard, or when the Lakers decided to go ahead and trade for Russell Westbrook. Like these, you win a championship and then you immediately start to mess with the formula that got you there in the first place. Always seems so odd to me. So the fact that they're trying their best, everything in their power to keep it the same, is very encouraging. And especially now it removes a lot of the pressures of, well, we've got a guy who's going into a contract year. We are not going to be able to work with the financial situation soon enough because of all of these restrictions with the CBA. Now that it's all settled and done, at least for the next 2 or 3 years, outside of a massive luxury tax bill, which was going to be huge anyway because of the players that you have under contract, you've got less to worry about. And I think that's good for this team. Just focus on the basketball. Don't worry about the numbers. Don't worry.
Yeah, that's somebody else's problem. Like, I'm not one to pocket watch, so I'm not one to be like, well, they've got billionaire owners letting it. Like, whatever.
It's not my
Someone's going to pay it. You know what I mean? If it's not Boston, another team's going to pay it to win, so why not be Boston? I'd much rather this team be like, yo, we're broke in about 10 years' time, 5 years' time, because they've got to recoup some of the additional expenditure. But we're talking about banner 25 at that point, or banner 23, 22, 21, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Then being like,
I can live with
oh,
that.
they blew it up after one. Now, I know you mentioned Milwaukee and LA. I think that they were in very different situations. Both teams were a little bit older. Boston have built quite a young core, so keeping them around makes more sense. They feel more like a GSW, like a Golden State, than they do a Milwaukee or a LA, where those two teams, they were built around Chris Middleton and Drew, and then LA was built around LeBron, who just doesn't seem to age at all. But no matter what, I feel very comfortable that there's at least another championship run in this team, maybe 2, before we even start talking about what happens with Drew, what happens with Kristaps. Hauser will play a legitimate role, so cool. I'm done. I pay $11 million a year, or 11 point whatever it is, to get you to that 45. Pay the man, let the man have a good time. I'm cool with that. He ain't that. I got nothing else to say on the matter.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think that puts a bow on it.
We'll be back later today, most likely. By the time you're watching this on Monday, if you're watching it on Sunday, we'll be back tomorrow to talk about the final Summer League game. If it's worth talking about. If it's not, then we'll try and find something a little bit more creative. Anything you want to say, Tim?
No, Pierce.
All right, then. Peace.
Cheers.